Let us begin. Welcome to Born Witchy, where we explore intuition through a modern lens on tarot. My name is Betina Bethlem, and I am your host, and this is my co-host, Stevie. And we're very excited to welcome you here today to dive deep into the topic of tarot, one of my favorite things to talk about. So, a lot of people ask me how the tarot came into my life. And I'm going to tell that story today as a way for you to get to know me a little bit better and to start to dive into what my goal is with Born Witchy, with this modern school of tarot that I am creating for you. So, tarot has been in my life for about 8 or 9 years now. It came in rather unexpectedly, but hello, King of Swords. This is the card that fell into the ocean in Ibiza, so I feel like it likes to pop out more often than the others. The truth is, tarot has been in my life forever in some way or another because I do really see tarot as a book of life, and all the different energies and scenarios and relationships and events that happen to our life are reflected in the book of tarot. But for me, it came in earnest about 8 or 9 years ago on a foundation of other types of witchcraft and woo-woo that I've been dabbling in since I was a kid. So my background is more in the realm of astrology and of yoga. They were always things that I was interested in. My dad was really into yoga when I was really little. I remember him standing on his head in the television room when I wanted to watch Sesame Street. And there were always a lot of new age books in the house that I could explore and peruse. So I feel like all of this was kind of like filtering into my world from a very young age. But when I was 15, I started doing yoga. I got an injury and I went to my first yoga class, and it really felt like this huge aha moment. I always say that yoga is the big love of my life, and that's something that I'm very trained in and have been actively participating in and practicing and getting teacher trainings in since I was a teenager. Astrology also has always been a part of my life in the sense that we have a family astrologer. My mom in particular was open to this from since before I was born. And it was actually an uncle of mine that met the man who became our family astrologer and who is one of my mentors. So I had my first reading with him when I was 19 years old, so almost 20 years ago now. And I've been learning and training and understanding the modality of astrology through him for the past 2 decades. So when the tarot came in, I already had this really rich foundation of yoga and astrology. And I'll add also that when I was in college, I studied English literature and art history. And that was an amazing foundation too, because tarot, like I said, is all about storytelling. It is this book of life. It covers these archetypes, these human archetypes that we all encounter as we walk through the different stages and events of our life. So studying literature, studying storytelling, studying a bit of film, and really looking at art history, I think also gave me a really interesting foundation for how to understand and read this text, this spiritual text. And that's something for you to think about too, like anyone who's reading tarot is bringing their experience and their context into it. So whatever you're into, like bring that into your tarot practice. You definitely have things in your history that are going to make it so that you are not starting from scratch when you start reading the tarot. Anyhow, when I was in my early 30s, I was engaged to be married based on timing and expectation rather than actual readiness. And I ended up dissolving that engagement when I was about 30 years old. And that led to kind of a big reset for me. You could almost call it like a spiritual awakening. I got really interested in spirituality. I got really interested in shadow work. I got really into like breath work and Kundalini yoga practices and things like that. And around that time, one of my acupuncturists and yoga teachers had to cancel an appointment with me one day because he was going to a tarot reading. And that really just like perked my ears up. I hadn't had a tarot reading since I was 18 or 19. I remember I was visiting San Francisco for the first time, and I went to this beauty salon, and this amazing Russian woman pulled cards for me, and she was using regular playing cards, and at the time I had no idea what was going on. But everything she said was really accurate, and she did a lot of predictive things that actually did come true back then. But that was kind of the only experience with tarot I had had until my early 30s, when this yoga teacher introduced me to his tarot reader. And I remember that tarot reading like it was yesterday, because I spoke to this reader over the phone and he pulled cards for me. And the one I remember that he pulled for me was the star. And he told me that I would be reading tarot one day for really important people like you, and that it was time for him to teach me. And, I was going through this whole dissolution of my engagement at the time, and I was really sort of seeking and trying to understand myself and like rebuild my own sense of identity after having sort of stepped away from this expectation of kind of marriage and kids that I was realizing wasn't actually mine. And so I said yes. I said, why not? It just really intuitively felt like the right thing to do. And I spent the next year studying with this teacher. We would just talk on the phone several times a week, and he taught me everything he knew about how to read cards and what each one meant, and really gave me this foundation. And it was using the Thoth deck, Aleister Crowley's Thoth deck, that I learned. So that's kind of where my lineage is. I studied with this teacher for a year, and after that period of study was over, I continued with a lot of self-study. I picked up a lot of books. I'm happy to share all these resources always with people who are curious. And I also just really started interacting with the cards and allowing the different modalities I knew to intersect. So the things I knew from yoga and meditation and breath work and astrology and art history and storytelling and literature, all of these things, I just started to weave them together to develop my own understanding of the cards. And at this point too, I also started giving readings to people and started learning how to work with my channel. And I found a real gift for it during this time. I ended up moving to Indonesia and becoming a yoga teacher at a resort in an island called Sumba there, called Nihi. And I was also offering Reiki, and I was offering tarot readings. And I was finding that my channel really was open and really did work. And during that time, I also met some of the people that would become some of my first kind of important students and clients, and people that would help me really build belief in the idea that I could be a full-time witch and tarot reader. So after a few years, moved to San Francisco. Again, it was my intuition that took me there. I was doing a medicine ceremony in Woodstock, New York during the pandemic, and I got this really strong message just to go west, and I went, and I got a marketing job there. I have a whole background in brand strategy as well that I think also combines into this, because again, it's a form of telling a story, and it's a form of connecting with people, and it's a form of creating community in a way as well. Anyhow, I moved to San Francisco and started offering more readings, more courses, more workshops, all of these kinds of things. And during this time, I found that readings were becoming really difficult for me in the sense that they were very energetically and emotionally draining. So I joined a course in Sausalito called the School of Intuition Medicine. Really amazing course, because I wanted to learn how to ground. I wanted to learn how to kind of like contain my energy in a different way. And I wanted to be more able to give readings to people who needed them and who wanted them in a way that didn't take from my own energy, So that was a really amazing experience as well, because so much of this practice too is, you are kind of like going up into the ethers in a way. You're opening up to spirit, and it's kind of this as above, so below, that in order for you to be really, really open to what's going to come in from spirit, it's really important to also equally and oppositely be very, very grounded and like tethered to this earth, and like tethered also within yourself and your vessel. So these are the ways that tarot entered my life and also started to grow and fill up my life in bigger ways. I will say that when this started, when I started learning what the meanings of these cards were, and I started exploring this modality, I never would have imagined that it could become such a central part of my life. But the tarot has really captured my imagination, and it's really inspired me, and it's made me realize that it's a really important spiritual text. if we are going to create a more intuitive world, if people are going to reclaim parts of themselves that society has asked us to separate and divorce from in some ways. The more I work with the tarot, the more I realize that its core message is that it wants to connect humanity back into its nature. We are natural. We're natural beings. We're part of Earth. We are earthlings. We have the four elements within us, and we are animals, essentially. And the tarot is here to help us kind of reconnect with this full system intelligence that we have within us. So it's interesting to look back on my history with tarot. When I first started, it was all about just learning what each of these individual cards meant and learning how they sequence together to tell a story and doing readings and all of these things like that. And now I see it really as a spiritual text. I keep saying that because I really strongly believe that this is a spiritual text, an unbound book of wisdom that we read in a non-linear way. We cast the cards, they come out in different orders, different sequences. Some are right side up, some are reversed. Sometimes we create spreads where each placement has a different meaning as well for the cards, and that's how we put together the syntax and the chapters of the story that we're telling each time we open the book. And this experience of reading in a non-linear, kind of non-intellectual way starts to bring other parts of your intelligence system online. It starts to activate your pattern recognition. It starts to make you realize that there are repeating patterns in nature. There are repeating patterns in life. There are repeating characters that you will meet. There are repeating scenarios that you'll find yourself in. And the more you play this game of tarot, the more you explore and read this book, the more recognizable these energetic moments become for you. I pulled a few cards before I started talking about this because I was curious what would come up. And so uncanny valley that the High Priestess came up first. I relate to this archetype a lot. The High Priestess is the keeper of the tarot, essentially. She is intuition. If you wanted to boil this card down to one single word, I would say it is intuition. This is the part of us that allows us to go beyond the veil, to commune with spirit, to commune with the unknown, to accept that not all knowing can be intellectually explained, and sometimes we just sort of spiritually know. And that's what the High Priestess is all about. And she is the keeper of this text, and she's the keeper of yoga and astrology. So I love that she came up because this is the role that I play when I teach and share tarot. And this is the archetype that will start to emerge in you as you develop your tarot practice. I also pulled as a second major arcana the card of Justice, which justice is the search for truth. I always think of it as a balancing of an ecosystem, that when the card of Justice comes up, we are doing the work of understanding our truth. You know, you can think of it as like that in a balanced justice system. That's what the point of a courtroom would be, right? Would be to like, oh, let's find what the truth is. Let's come into balance so that we can harmonize society by creating fairness and blah, blah, blah. All of this sort of Libra coded kind of thing is baked into the Justice card. But, you know, in the artwork of this card, I'm showing a beekeeper. So I love this because so much of why I am doing Born Witchy and why I am here talking to you today is because I want to see more intuitive beings walking this earth. I really believe that if more people are tapped into their intuition, the world will become a better place. The world will become a more balanced ecosystem because we will be in more balance and coherence within ourselves. I love that these two cards came up because they really do encapsulate kind of the mission statement of Born Witchy and my why. More intuition, a balanced, beautiful ecosystem we love. I also have to thank my cards, my Cosmic Codes tarot deck, which is my tarot deck that I made. You can find a link for it below. It brought up one of my favorite example cards when I'm trying to explain how the tarot works. It brought up the Seven of Swords. This is an interesting card, and I think it's a really great example to demonstrate to folks why the tarot is of value. When the Seven of Swords comes up, not all information is available. It can be a little bit sneaky. It can mean that there's lying happening. It can mean that someone's not being completely honest, either maliciously or maybe just because they have a people-pleasing issue and they can't be completely honest. Regardless of what the exact scenario that is happening is, whenever this card comes up, it means there is some sneaking around and there's a need to sleuth out more information. It's a dissonance in information. Sevens tend to have a bit of dissonance and kind of blurriness in them. And swords is communication, the mind. So yeah, you can think of this card as lying or deception, or something needs to still be uncovered. So that's what this card means. And think of it this way. If you are studying the tarot and you understand that that's what the Seven of Swords is, when you're in real life, let's say you're on a date or you're at a job interview and you feel the same energy and vibe that you feel when you look at this card, then you'll know. You'll say, I think there's a little bit of Seven of Swords going on over here. I think I should ask more questions. I think I should get a little bit more curious. Something is not being said. That's why I love this card as an example of why the tarot is so awesome, because as you study these cards, you understand the energetic signature of different things. So then when you encounter them in your real everyday life, you become better at reading energy. That's being intuitive. That is it. You will read the energy and then you'll know what to do, because the cards are all embedded with advice of like, okay, what do you do when there's a sneaky energy? You ask more questions. You get curious. You don't sign on the dotted line quite yet, you know? A big mission of mine with Born Witchy is to teach you how to read the cards so that you are empowered with it. You don't have to go outsource to a reader to connect with your own intuition. It's a card game that helps train you in that so that you understand how your intuition speaks to you. And so then you're able to have your psychic gifts come online, not in a woo-woo way, literally in a I want to know how to read the energy of the room at any given moment kind of way. I want to always be tapped into that intuitive knowing that guides me through my life so that it unfolds in a more aligned and beautiful and flowing way. And if we all do that, if we all tap into a more intuitive way of living and making choices and going through our life, I do think that we will end up in that more balanced, harmonious ecosystem that the Justice card promises. And so I'm so thankful that the tarot came into my life the way it did. It appeared at a moment where I was very lost and very confused. I had spent my 20s kind of like wanting to find a partner, a husband, just because I thought you were supposed to do that by the time you were 30. And then I turned 30 and I had gotten everything I thought I wanted. And I wasn't super happy in my branding job. And I was engaged to this wonderful person, but I didn't want to proceed. I was just like, wait, is this all there is? And I was just so questioning of like, there's got to be more to life than this. And the tarot came in at that very moment and taught me so much about what it is to be human and what it is to have a connection to our full system intelligence, as I like to say. We'll talk some other time about what I mean by that. There are 4 elements, 4 suits in this deck, just like in a regular deck of cards, and they correlate to these 4 types of intelligence that we have within us, which are also connected to the 4 elements. Very cool. So many intersections in the tarot, so many ways to understand life. I hope you'll continue following me here. Hit the subscribe button. I'm going to be posting regular videos about the subject matter of tarot as it relates to creating a really, really tapped in and vibrant and intelligent intuition. And I'm excited to share that with you. Okay, witches, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.